I'll unbox you, my pretty, and your little soul, too! Ha ha ha!
Oh, it smells like Grandpa. Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new, very exciting video here on the channel. We're going to be doing a cheeky little unboxing video today of a new acquisition that was part of the production and the creation of Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. Now, if you are a subscriber to the channel, if you are a frequent visitor, viewer of the channel, firstly, may God have mercy on your soul and thank you for putting up with my bullshit. But you guys also probably know that Freddy's Dead is near and dear to my heart. It's one of my favorite Elm Street films, but in the same way, I love Samurai Cop, I love The Room, I love Troll 2. It's so bad, it's good for me, but also there's a lot of nostalgia goggles because Freddy's Dead was the first Elm Street film that I ever watched when I was a kid. My dad taped half of it because he thought it'd be too scary for me. And when I first watched it, I was absolutely terrified. Now I have an absolute hoot with it. I have so much Freddy's Dead memorabilia. Obviously the glove, I've got an original Daybill poster. I've got things that have been signed by the cast. And today I'm going to be unboxing the second draft of the script, the original second draft, an original script done by Michael DeLuca back in 1990. So this came from a fellow movie prop collector by the name of Patrick. It came on my radar with thanks to my friend Cameron, who sent me the original listing on the Movie Props Facebook page. Now, when it came to the development of Freddy's Dead, as a lot of us know, Peter Jackson even wrote a script along with his writing partner Danny Mulholland that was named A Nightmare on Elm Street 6: The Dream Lover, where Freddy was essentially this decrepit old joke of a figure in the dream world, and kids would purposefully put themselves to sleep to go and beat the piss out of him, Clockwork Orange style, as they stated in the Never Sleep Again documentary. And obviously that script wasn't approved, and eventually they went to Michael DeLuca, Rachel Talalay, who eventually became the director of Freddy's Dead, penned the script Freddy's Dead, went through multiple drafts, and then they finally went ahead and started shooting it. But as they say in the Never Sleep Again documentary, the good thing about Peter Jackson writing that initial script was he built the foundation of his relationship with Bob Shaye, founder of New Line Cinema, and then eventually would go on to direct the Lord of the Rings films, and they turned out pretty damn good. So yeah, this is the second draft, an original second draft script from 1990. I'm really excited about this. This is something that wasn't exactly on my radar, but when it was brought to my attention, I just had to have it. Because again, it's a piece of history with Freddy's Dead. It's part of the making of. It's part of the reason why Freddy's Dead is Freddy's Dead. So what we're going to be doing is unboxing it. I have it right here, all the way from the UK. So what I'm going to do, unbox it. We're going to take a look at it. We're going to give it a good old sniff to see if it smells like Grandpa. So I have seen photos of the front and the back. There is some pen scribble on the back with the name Howard, I think. So I've been looking at crew members by the name of Howard and trying to figure out who that could be. But then after that, what we're going to do, I'm going to stop recording, go through the script, and see if there's any changes from this script to the final film that we know and love. But yeah, I just want to go through and see if there's any differences, like with dialogue, scenes, characters, and stuff like that, and then wrap this video up. But yeah, I think it'd just be pretty interesting and a lot of fun, but I'm rambling on. Let's unbox this beautiful piece. Now I'll take this off. Now I would love to open the box with it, but these are butter knives and they're pretty dull. And also, hands are clean. This is a beautifully packaged script, by the way. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ooh. Stanley using a Stanley knife. Actually, yeah, this is a damn good box. Look, it's even got rivets on it. How fancy is that? Very fancy. Ooh, got packing peanuts. Oh, jeez. The dog's gonna love this. So what I might do is transport these packing peanuts because the fuckers will get everywhere. No matter how hard you try to make sure packing peanuts don't go everywhere, they just end up going everywhere. Any on the floor? Yep. God damn it. Put it back on. All right, cool. Oh boy. Now let me see, where is the front? That's the front right there. Okay. I can see the New Line Cinema logo. That's so exciting. Okay. Very careful. Look at me. I've got the shakes. I'm so excited and nervous. It's a fucking script. Oh, it smells like Grandpa. There you go. Look at that, guys. How fucking sick is that? So, New Line Cinema, Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare, second draft, the 27th of the 9th, 1990. Copyright 1990, New Line Cinema Incorporated. New Line Cinema Productions, 116 North Robertson Boulevard, Los Angeles, California. And phone number, even a good old fax number. So there you go. Damn, this is so sick. Ah. Now, like I said, there is some pen scribble on the back. It says 494-0591 Howard. I'm pretty sure that says Howard. Hopefully that's focusing. Does that focus? Yeah, there you go. So I have looked at a few crew members' names. There are a couple of Howards, whether it be first names, surnames. But oh man, this is amazing. I love like the stains and stuff like that. Okay, so the very first line is a 727 jetliner thunders through a stormy ridden sky night. Okay, so we're off to a pretty familiar start. Excuse me, miss.
Oh,
Yes?
can I have a different seat, please?
Oh, I'm afraid we're full tonight, sir. You're just gonna have to stay put.
Thanks anyway.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is go through the script, take note of any changes, anything that is different from the final cut of the film. We're going to go through them and check them out.
1 day later.
Alrighty, so I've gone through the script, and there's a lot that has changed, and some of it originally was kind of intriguing, pretty interesting, could have made the film better. Look, you can't polish a turd at the end of the day. I'm fully aware that this is one of my favorite turds, but there are some interesting dream sequences. Freddy does some interesting shit. At one point, he's riding a horse, but we'll get into that. So this comes in at about 120 pages. So originally, this could have been like a 2-hour horror film. Now, I've got some poster notes on the changes that I want to touch on. So the very first one is actually with the bigger, robust lady in the plane at the very beginning with John Doe. So it's more or less just an extra bit of dialogue. So it says, John to fat woman, alarm. Did you hear that? Fat woman, don't be a pussy. So the little girl that pops up in front of John says, he's not going to let you out, you're the last. And John just says, fuck, and then he gets sucked out of the plane. Now, this is where it gets interesting. When John lands on the ground from coming out of the plane, Freddy is riding a horse, and it even says, so we see on Freddy, we see him from the back, from the waist up. He's wearing a brown leather jacket, a bullwhip hanging off his side with his fedora and all. You'd swear he was that quote-unquote Indiana guy. John then says, hiya Freddy, fuck you. We swing around and reveal Freddy racing after John. Freddy's riding a horse all right, a dead one. In fact, it's only a horse's skeleton. And for a bunch of bones, it's going pretty fast, Freddy laughs. So that's an interesting take on Freddy. It's an interesting image of Freddy. Like, Freddy's done a lot of shit. He's driven a bus, you know, he's been a chef. He's done a lot of weird shit. He's had a lot of jobs throughout the Nightmare series, but a horse rider and a knockoff Indiana Jones, or in this case, Indiana Bones, it's pretty interesting. Now, when Freddy gets off the horse skeleton, all the bones kind of just disassemble and fall on the ground, and Freddy says, had to put him to sleep, think I'll do the same to you. And that's when John gets thrown through that portal, and Freddy goes, be a good little doggy, go fetch. Now, when it comes to the youth shelter stuff, we actually have an extra character. We have a character by the name of Jonas, Jonas, a 17-year-old b-boy trying hard to impress a pissed off young lady, and that is Tracy. So there's a bit of exchange between Jonas, Carlos, and then eventually Tracy. So there's a lot more stuff that goes on inside the shelter. But this Jonas guy is actually referenced later on in the film. You hear him say to John,
Hey, I'll break a bottle over your head if you don't shut the fuck up!
Now, there's a lot more dialogue between Maggie and Doc when she goes and visits him after the altercation with Tracy. Now, at one point, Maggie has an actual sit-down meeting with Spencer. We obviously see their quick little interaction at the beginning of the film where he has the pipe bomb confiscated and his dad comes to visit him and says, you know, my son needs more work, and Maggie says he isn't a Toyota. But there's a full-blown like therapy session between Maggie and Spencer. Now, when Maggie and John are in the van driving to the town to see what's going on and try and re-jog John's memory, we do see him have that nightmare of that little girl in the middle of the road. But in this part of the script, Freddy does actually come into play. I think Freddy is like taking on the form of like a giant. He says, fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the dreams of the very young. He licks his chops, he smells the delivery of some fresh takeout food. And that's when John says, I told you not to let me fall asleep. Now, when John and Maggie get to the school, here's a pretty interesting line from John. It says, John, remembering, Fred Krueger was a dirty child killer, like it says, but he didn't do all that. motions towards the memoriam, which we do see in the film, until he became Freddy. So it's that transition from Fred to Freddy, which is, not overly interesting, but a little bit layered with the choice of words. Now, there's a character also by the name of Sykes, like Jonas, who we don't see at all and was completely cut from the script, except for Jonas's little one-on-one with that bit of dialogue towards John. But Sykes was apparently a former friend of Freddy's. So Maggie and John talk to Sykes, which isn't easy. The man is barely understandable. His conversation is scattered and twitchy. Sykes, FK, and me were buddies, pals. We worked together right here, caretakers. Maggie, what happened to all the children in this school? Sykes, the kids? I knew there'd be people coming to blame it on me. Sykes, he made me promise not to tell. Said it'd get worse if I did after he came back. Maggie, from where? From being dead. He promised me he'd come for me in my sleep. That's where he gets you. Points to his hidden eyes. But I'm not too smart for him. I've took care of that. Everything might have been different if they hadn't took the kid away. John, what kid? Sykes, FK's kid. Snooty citizens took it away from him, put it in the orphanage. That was that. After that, FK had no reason to hide it anymore. So I'm essentially thinking this dude was the original iteration of the crazy teacher that we see in the school, kind of talking to himself, pointing at the chalkboard with all the timeline, with all the events of Freddy Krueger's life. Now, when it comes to Carlos's death, it's pretty much the same, pretty straightforward until the very end with one of Freddy's final quips. So on Freddy, as he appears behind Carlos, a rat is perched on his shoulder, nibbling on Carlos's ear, and just Freddy quips, hey, he's chewing your ear off. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Maggie's original name isn't Catherine. So in the orphanage, when John and Maggie are there and that crazy orphanage lady is there, John says, A. Krueger, it could mean anything from Andrew to Arthur. So again, he still thinks it's a boy when he sees the crayon drawing of Freddy and his family. Now, when we go to John's dream that eventually leads to his death, he does indeed fall out of his house, but he falls back onto the horse that he was riding at the beginning when Freddy was also riding his skeleton horse. Now, John says to Freddy, I know who I am now, and Freddy and John have a bit more of a back and forth as opposed to the back and forth they have when Freddy's hanging off John's parachute. So Freddy says, having fun? Really? John, I know the reason why you let me live. And Freddy goes, you think you're my little boy? Freddy, what a fine young man you become. Leans in and whispers, too bad you're not mine. John, but you let me live. Freddy, only long enough to bring my daughter back, which we pretty much do get in the film. Your soul will give me the strength to cross this damn border, and she will carry me out to a whole new playground. So from the description, is you see Freddy on the horse going back and forth along this so-called dream border, trying to break onto the other side so he can get more victims. So instead of a bed of spikes John falls on, Freddy just essentially plunges his glove straight into John, but Maggie sees the holes open back in the real world. Now, after Spencer's death, this is pretty interesting. Maggie sets up a meeting with Spencer's father to try and debrief and explain what's happened. And like the line that Doc says, he just didn't kill Carlos and the others, he erased them. Spencer's father doesn't know what's going on. He says to Maggie, I'm paraphrasing here, but it says between the back and forth, I don't have a son. You know, you're wasting my time. You've come into my place of work, set up this meeting, and you're telling me that I have a son when I don't have a son, which could have been pretty interesting. I like that kind of shock of like, well, what do you mean you had a son and now you're saying you've never had a son in your life? And Spencer's father goes, Maggie says, you must be wondering about Spencer. And his father says, not even close. What I'm wondering is about my stolen BMW. Other than that, I haven't the slightest idea what you're talking about. Now, this is where we get the name reveal of Freddy's daughter. So like in the movie when Maggie steps out and she's wearing the clothes that she wore as a little girl when she witnessed her mother being killed by Freddy, Freddy comes out of nowhere and says, I love home movies. And Freddy looks at her and says, Alexandria. So her name in this script, in the second draft, is Alexandria Krueger. Now, this dialogue is the dialogue that Freddy has with Doc about the dream people, but he has this particular bit of dialogue with Maggie instead by saying, the dream people are the ones who gave me this job. Maggie, you can't be my father. They took you away from me, but I made them pay. So it's like a mishmash of the chat he has with Doc, but also the chat he has with Maggie before he proclaims every town has an Elm Street. Now, there's a bit more dialogue between Freddy and Tracy when Tracy's having that nightmare and beats the absolute piss out of her quote-unquote father. Freddy, what's with kids today? No respect. Tracy, you can't fool me anymore. Freddy, you're smarter than your little dumb friend Carlos. You'll be with him soon. Now, here's a bit of a plot twist. Doc actually dies in this script, and it's a pretty interesting death. And with the description, I think it could have made for a pretty gnarly death, a unique one at that, and quite imaginative. So We see Doc going down a hallway in his dream and his eyes are gone. Freddy has his eyes like those stainless steel balls that you see in a therapist's office, and he's clacking them together. So Freddy, what's up, Doc? I can't believe, this line wasn't in the final film. It just would have made sense to have a what's up, Doc. But Freddy says in the script, what's up, Doc? Lose something? Doc stumbles towards Freddy. Doc, not again. Freddy, I've got your eyes, Doc. Friend of yours gave them to me. He sends his regards. Freddy swings Doc's eyes like a bolo and lets it fly on Doc as they swing around his neck until they tighten up, and then we cut back to the real world where Maggie and Tracy find Doc with a freshly slit throat, and he dies. So in the lead up to the climax of the film, the final fight between, well, this time Alexandria and her father, there's a bit more dialogue. So Freddy, you can take the Freddy out of Springwood, but you can't take the Springwood out of Freddy. Freddy continues, I waited all this time for our family reunion, but you're just like all the rest. Freddy, once again, time to take your medicine. And Maggie hears a voiceover of Doc saying, stay in control, kind of like a Force Ghost type thing. Maggie, get into his brain. And Freddy says, get out of my head. Now, they actually filmed this little segment. You can see it right here. And there's promo stills of that particular shot. So that was indeed filmed, but cut from the final cut of the film. Now, when there's also the flashback of Freddy as a kid, and you see the kids teasing him, and then we see them grown up, there is also a brief glimpse of Freddy's trial happening. So we see interior courtroom day, quick cuts of the adult Freddy on trial, the judge's gavel comes down, judge, case dismissed, when the search warrant wasn't signed in the correct place. Now, when it comes to the ending, it's not as full on and as bombastic as the final fight between Catherine and Freddy, but this time around it's between Alexandria and Freddy. So essentially there's a bit more back and forth with, Freddy saying, I try to do so good, try and be a good father, and Maggie, well, in this instance, Alexandria kind of humors him. There is a bit of a back and forth, a fight. Maggie essentially just plunges the glove straight into Freddy and says, this is for mum. Maggie then, I keep calling her Maggie. Alexandria goes back into the real world and all she has is the glove, and Freddy is gone. But at the very end, on the very last page, and I'm not going to lie, it's an interesting hook, because obviously when Freddy dies, the dream demons escape and go off into the dream world to find another host. It says, interior, kitchen, night. One poor teenage kid is not outside playing, not outside getting his first kiss, popping his first zit. He's in here getting the crap beat out of him by his large and deranged mother. She wields a leather belt. Mother, between smacks. Get in there until you know how to behave. I'll teach you to take your medicine. She shoves him into the small broom closet. Dark, cramped. The kid can barely fit. Move in on his face. Deranged. The damage has been done. He hears a whisper. Voices. Hey boy. He looks around. We start to see Freddy's dream people materialize. The kid smiles at them. Dream spirits whisper in the kid's ear in a chilling way. Hey boy, we know what you want. The cycle continues. Fade out. That, I'm not going to lie, is a pretty interesting little hook to end on. Whether that would have continued in another film or that's that. But I like that. The dream people, the dream demons, the dream sperm, or as Frank from the Slaughtered Lamb calls them, Larry, Curly, and Mo, they've found another host. So this indeed Freddy does stay dead. But there are a lot of interesting concepts in here. Would it have improved the film? It probably still would have been pretty shit. But Doc's death was pretty interesting. Freddy riding a fucking horse like Indiana Jones. It's still silly. But that ending, pretty good. And there you go, guys. Hope you dug this very special unboxing. Again, I know Freddy's Dead isn't everyone's cup of tea, but it definitely is my mug of tea. And to have an original second draft script from 1990, I was only 2 years old. This is damn cool. So next up is figuring out how to display this thing, with a shadow box or something like that. But a massive thank you to fellow collector Patrick for giving me the opportunity to purchase this thing. It's awesome. It's awesome to have something that is part of the production and the creation of Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. So with that being said, guys, let me know down below if there's any particular movie script, not just Elm Street, that would be your grail script collector's piece. Love you guts, and I'll catch you in the next one.